Well, we get it rolling on the Krueg Show. It is August the 10th. I'm here in the Bay Area. Jack Hammer's out in Vegas where the 49ers took on the Raiders today in practice, of course, in advance of the preseason game number 1, which is coming up on Sunday. And Jack was there for all of it, and now he's with us on the Pig and a Pickle Krueg Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. Check them out. They're open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass and New York Style Sausage Company. Jack, good to see you, man. How was practice?
Hey, good to see you too, Larry. Practice was an interesting practice. You know, we really got to see a lot of the 49ers offense. Got to see some of the 49ers defenses too. It was kind of hard to see some of the stuff that was taking place, but we definitely got to see them working against Jimmy Garoppolo, which was interesting. The way that all went down. So overall, it was a good day. Some good, some bad, all those types of things.
Sure. Practice, that's the way it always goes. There's a little good, a little bad. And I got a kick out of it just looking at some of the pictures from, I think Eric Branch put out a picture, and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm basically, the Raiders and Niners are practicing in Arizona, and I'm here in Nevada. It was the Raiders did not, I heard, were not quite as hospitable as the Niners normally are. Grant said they didn't give everybody lunch, and they put you guys, 3 fields away at times from the action?
Yeah, no food. There was water, and they also gave us Gatorade too. So you got to give them some props for the Gatorade on top of the water. That was it. And just a lot different in terms of the time that we're able to film was also much more restricted than it is in Santa Clara with the 49ers. And then beyond that, Santa Clara has 2 practice fields. The Raiders have 3. And they did everybody a favor by practicing on the 2 fields furthest away from us, a full field in between us and the first field when they got to the team stuff. So that made it a little bit of a challenge to see. And that's why I think at least for myself today, most of my stuff is based on what we saw during team, because for the 49ers offense, primarily because that's what was closest to us, what we could really get a good view of.
What was the weather conditions like there? I mean, I know it's Nevada, so it's going to be warm, but I mean, how warm was it? What time did practice actually start?
Well, practice started 8:40, and it wasn't bad at all. Practice was, I mean, if you were standing in the sun, it was a little warm, but no, it wasn't. I'll tell you this, it wasn't as hot as the last day that we were all together in Santa Clara. That was a lot hotter than what we had today for practice. It actually rained. We actually had that summer rain that comes through the desert. We had one of those this morning about 7 o'clock, a little after 7. Right as I got off the airplane, got rained on trying to get to the car. And then it rained a little bit more right around the time I got to the facility, and then it was fine after that. So it was just a nice morning in terms of weather. Definitely a lot hotter now though.
Where is it in relation to the stadium? Is it next to the stadium, their practice facility, or is the stadium in a totally different location?
Totally different location. So, the stadium is right off the strip by where Luxor and those hotels are down. I don't know.
The Mandalay Bay. Yeah.
Mandalay Bay, that end of the strip. Well, Henderson and everything else is on the other end of the strip, the south side. So you go all the way, if you drove all the way down the strip, from the stadium, it'd probably take you about 10-15 minutes to get to the practice facility in Henderson. So that's where it is. I don't know if it's north, south, east, or west. I don't know.
Look at that. Stay greasy, says Larry. I picked up some New York style sausage at Costco. Pretty good. There you go. Appreciate you. Stay greasy. Okay, why don't we before we get into the quarterbacks and the practice itself, the news of the day is that Ray McLeod's probably out for the next couple months. Tell us. I guess we were there for this. This on the play, that the ball that Darnold threw down the sideline that was picked off a couple practices ago, Tuesday or so, by Jair Brown. On that play, I guess Ray broke his left wrist.
I don't know exactly which play. Did they actually say that was the play that?
Yeah, that was what they're saying. They're saying on that pass play. If you remember on that pass play, Ray came back kind of up the sideline very gingerly, and quite a bit later. The play was over, and he came up 30 seconds later. They were already on to the next play. Made me wonder if he had gone down. I didn't notice him, holding the wrist in any different particular way, but nor do I remember him leaving practice. But I guess it's broken, and he's out for 2 months.
Yeah, I didn't remember him leaving practice either. I know the play exactly you're talking about. I do remember him, getting back up the sideline late. I just didn't realize it was on that particular play. But that's a big injury for the 49ers because Ray McLeod, I feel, is their fourth best wide receiver. And so to lose him, I think it's an interesting. It opens up some opportunities for other guys, especially an 8-week injury that takes you into week 4, maybe 5,
Yeah.
before you're able to come back and be ready to go in the regular season. So that's a loss, and but it opens up the door for some other guys. I think Ronnie Bell, if that's is a guy that I would point to that injury opening a door because you saw him get reps earlier today in practice than we've seen for most of training camp.
Yeah, there's Ronnie Bell, there's Tay Martin, there's Willie Snead, who's looked good. There's Chris Conley on the receiver side. Then there's also Deshaun Jameson to maybe replace Ray as a return guy. It's just one more. That's the thing about these roster cutdowns is that you go through the whole list and you're like, okay, how do they cut from 90 to 53? In reality, injuries are probably going to cut you from 90 to 80. So you're really just cutting from 80 down to 53 by the time the cut down comes. That being said, how did the receivers look in practice today against the Raider corners?
They were a lot better than they were in our last practice with them on Tuesday. Tuesday was just a drop fest out there. Today it wasn't as bad for the receiving group as a whole. There was a couple of drops, but nothing as bad as what we saw that day. Ronnie Bell had a couple of really nice catches from Trey Lance, so that was nice to see. He's progressed at times. He had a slow start to camp, and then over about the last week and a half or so, you start to see him getting more targets, and he's catching the ball better. So Ronnie Bell has been doing a nice job. Juwan Jennings was the guy today, though. They targeted him, I think, 8 times I counted. So he got a lot of targets went his way. Everything that came to him that was catchable, he caught. So that was good. So I thought the receivers overall looked good today. It's different, going against the Raiders. You see these guys actually getting hit for a change, and so those tight catches aren't just we're going to get to you and let you make the catch. Now you got guys actually hitting you as the ball's coming to you. So like that happened to Deebo Samuel today on one play where he got the ball knocked out of his hands and so on. So just a different situation. It was from that standpoint, that was one of the cool things about practice today.
I heard that Nate Hobbs and Jennings kind of jawed at each other. Shanahan and McDaniels, I guess, agreed that anybody who throws a punch in these practices will be kicked out of practice. So I guess there was no punch thrown between Jennings and Hobbs. But did you see Jennings and Hobbs going nose to nose a little bit?
Yeah, there was a little, swatting your hands away kind of things. One guy was mad at the other for something, and so he kind of was getting up on him and swat the hands away, but it didn't really escalate too much. But Jennings has that effect on people. He's always up in your business with blocks and that kind of stuff down the field, and DBs don't always like that. So it leads to stuff like what we saw today.
Yeah. Let's talk about the injuries for a second outside of this. Danny Gray, I guess, was sore and didn't practice today. Drake Jackson hurt his hamstring in Santa Clara last week. He didn't practice today. And then I guess George Kittle went down with an abductor. They're saying he's going to be out a week, and that Dre Greenlaw went out in this practice with a hamstring. Did you see any of these injuries, or were they all just kind of under the radar and we just found out afterwards?
I didn't know that happened with Dre Greenlaw because I don't know at what point it happened, because I know that he was on the field at the beginning and going through the individual work, because that was something that took place right in front of us today. So it must have happened with Greenlaw when they were off going against the offense where we couldn't see him quite as well. That's the way it sounded anyway. And the Kittle injury, Kittle wasn't. I didn't see Kittle on the field today, so I don't think he was dressed. I think that his injury occurred prior to getting out here. So the way that it works, and Shanahan mentioned it today. You've got some guys like Kittle, and Drake Jackson is another one who has the injury that he suffered a few days back. He doesn't expect Kittle or Greenlaw to play again the rest of this week, and in some ways, I don't see a problem with that. The next practice in Santa Clara is probably going to be Tuesday, so that gives you almost a week to get these guys, right again.
Well, and you don't play for real for a month, and you know what? You don't need to find out about Kittle. You need to find out about the other tight ends. You don't need to find out about Greenlaw or Warner. You need to find out about the other linebackers. So I got no problem if they're taking extra precautions with these top tier players. I did see Aaron Banks, who was battling. He was in the concussion protocol last week. Was back at practice today, and according to the reports I read, Jack, Banks won some of his one-on-one reps. Were you able to watch any of the O-line, D-line, one-on-ones? And I'd heard that Armstead beat Dylan Parham. Somebody said Javon Kinlaw had a nice couple reps against Greg Van Rotten, and then Alex Barrett had a couple of good reps in the one-on-ones, one against a guard, one against a tackle. That's what I'm hearing. What did the one-on-ones look like to you, or could you see from where you were at?
Well, they were right in front of us. So the one-on-ones were right in front of us, but the offense is going at the same time in the defense. And so today I wanted to focus on the offensive side because I wanted to see how I really wanted to see Colton McKivitz go up against. I was hoping he was going to go up against Max Crosby, but instead we got to see him against Chandler Jones. So I really saw that side of the line. And the offensive line for the 49ers dominated in those. You talked about Aaron Banks at the beginning of that. Aaron Banks just stoned the guys from the Raiders. It wasn't even close. It was just,
Belial Nichols and those guys.
Yeah, it was like they were running into a brick wall. It was just he nailed them every time. Cole McKivitz on Chandler Jones. I thought that was an interesting matchup. I thought that I felt like McKivitz won the rep that he had with Chandler Jones. Grant said he felt like it was the other way around. There was a spin move that was involved in there where they disengaged a little bit, but Colton McKivitz is just so good with his feet. He's right there. And then there's a little bit of, tried that spin move, and he just slid, got there again, and rode him around in front of the quarterback and pushed him through. I thought it was a win for him. So, I went through, and the first time through for the Flyers starting offensive line, I felt like they all won their reps. And if there was one guy that struggled, it was Brendel. The other four I felt were really good throughout that session. One of the things that they did today that we don't see in Santa Clara that I thought was really cool was they, instead of just doing one-on-ones, they also did 2-on-2. So they had the guard and the tackles working against a defensive tackle and in the end. And the Raiders doing a lot of twists and stunts and those kind of things. And that was cool to see the guards and the tackles having to switch off and be able to cover that stuff. And I felt like Trent Williams, Aaron Banks did a really good job of it. And same thing over on the other side, Cole McKivitz and Spencer Burford on the rep that they did like that. Oh man, it was pretty because of the way that it's like a dance. I mean, it's like a violent dance, right?
Yeah.
With those guys, the way that they work and the switch off between the two was really nice. And then when they come back the other way around, not only does McKivitz have the guy on the end, but Spencer Burford is just in perfect position. And you could tell that Burford used to be a tackle the way that he blocks him in pass protection.
How about Leroy Watson, Jalen Moore, Pryor? How do those guys do? I mean, ultimately, the Niners are looking for that swing tackle. We know it's going to be Trent on the left side, McKivitz on the right side. But the question is, are any of these swing tackles in camp with the Niners good enough to be their swing tackle, or like some people believe, do you think they're going to acquire a tackle between now and the cut down to be their third guy?
Yeah, so with Leroy Watson, he got beat bad on his first rep. He was up against, I'm not sure what his name. Let me look at the name real quick. I'm sorry. He was up against Malcolm Kuntz on his first rep, and Kuntz just ran right around him. It was just engage, pushed him, and he was gone. But after that, he came back and he had a really nice rep. He put the guy on his back. He got into him, and they started getting around. And next thing you know, the end is on his back, and Watson is looking down on him. So that was nice to see. It was nice to see him kind of bounce back from the bad rep. And I felt like Pryor did pretty good as well. Pryor, I have him down for 2 reps, and he won both of those. So I really felt like the 49ers offensive line today really stood out to me in terms of one of the positives. The only sack that they gave up that I saw in team was on a really long, slow developing play action play. It was good coverage down the field, and Purdy had nowhere to go with the ball, and just ended up throwing it in the ground to mimic a sack, basically.
What did you think of the premier matchup, which was Max Crosby, Trent Williams? Who got the upper hand there?
Yeah, Trent Williams got both of those. That was cool to see because those guys are studs, right? And that was strength on strength, and Trent Williams is just so damn good. He won both the reps, but Crosby was, it wasn't like he, like I said on the with Aaron Banks, how I say just stoned him where he just wasn't moving. At least there was a little bit of movement there for Max Crosby against Trent Williams.
Let's get to the quarterbacks. It's funny. I saw an interview, Steve Mariucci on Rich Eisen. Did you see any of that today?
I didn't know.
So Mariucci goes on with Rich Eisen. He's talking about Trey Lance, and it's amazing. It's like everybody's drawing this conclusion. Mariucci made it seem like, hey, if Trey Lance plays well, he doesn't say, hey, if Trey Lance plays well, man, he'll be a nice prospect for the Niners, or he'll be a nice number 2 for the Niners. It's like, hey, if he plays well, Darnold will be number 2 and Allen will be number 3, and the 49ers will be able to find some draft pick compensation for him. And it's like, it's amazing the constant drumbeat of the Trey Lance speculation that comes from Eisen and Florio and the national guys, and now Mariucci kind of chiming in. Not like, hey, if Trey plays well, that's great news for the Niners and he'll be here as the backup to. It's like, oh, if he plays well, then the Niners should be able to really get a couple of picks. It's like the national story around Trey is that the people who, I don't know if they're in the know or not, but there's a constant drumbeat of, man, if he plays well, she'll be able to get something in a trade, as opposed to if he plays well, he'll be able to, be behind Brock and be right there if Brock goes down. It all goes back to, if he plays well, they'll move him. How did Trey look today?
It was a mixed bag for him, especially, and really quick on this whole Lance thing. It's like, I don't know, man. We've been there every day. I've been there every day. And I feel like Trey Lance is the second best quarterback on the 49ers.
I do too.
I feel like his performance in training camp has been better than Sam Darnold. He's been more consistent than Sam Darnold in terms of getting the ball down the field, not necessarily deep shots, but just like, those intermediate routes where the 49ers make their money. He's been much better there. And so I don't know. There was an article even that came out the last day of practice that we were in Santa Clara from somebody with Sports Illustrated saying that Sam Darnold's the number 2 guy and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you've been to practice one day. And the one day that you're there was like the first time in a week and a half that Trey Lance has struggled a little bit. I mean, maybe talk to some people around the team that's actually been watching him practice. I know we're not talking to Kyle Shanahan one-on-one, getting his inner thoughts on the situation, but from what I've seen, I think that Lance has been the second best quarterback in camp, and
I agree. He passes the eyeball test says that Lance is the second best quarterback in the camp.
Yes, it does. And today's practice was an interesting one. Darnold only got 6 reps today. That's all he got in team stuff. He got a few throws in 7-on-7. They did that a little bit in the middle of practice too. But
someone said 9 total reps all in the 7-on-7 and the team stuff for Darnold today. 27 for Purdy, 19 for Trey, 0 for Brandon Allen. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and that's about right. And I would say for Lance, the only difference between Lance and Darnold was that Lance got the rep at the end of practice and to move the ball. They were doing a hurry up situation. And that's where the majority of his snaps came from, was in that session right there. But you look at Trey Lance's day overall, and it started off rough. First 3 plays, there was a run, there was a fumbled snap, and then they false start. They're off. Now Darnold comes on. Then Lance comes back in for his first team deal. He has an incompletion on a bad throw on a screen. Easy screen type of throw to Juwan Jennings. It's an incompletion, another incompletion. So he starts off the day one of 5, I think it is, throwing. But the thing with him is you want to see how he progresses throughout practice. And they got to that move the ball, and he looked really good moving on. The situation was under 2 minutes, down by 4, and he just went right down the field. He had a completion to a nice little completion through a deep ball that was just overthrown. And then he had 4 really nice completions in a row to get them deep into the red zone. Uh, and then there was a throwaway to, he was trying to hit Jordan Mason, but I think he was throwing it out the back of the end zone. And then the last play, 2 seconds left from like the 8-yard line, pressure, has to get out of the pocket, slides to his left, throws a shot to Cameron Latu, should have been a touchdown. And Cameron Latu needs to get some stickum.
He's not catching it.
It doesn't catch it. He's getting open. He's getting open. He's showing the ability to get open. He shows the ability to go up and get his hand on the ball, but the guy just can't catch it.
That's 3 drops for Latu in the last 2 practices.
Yeah, it's been a problem for him all throughout training camp, not just recently, but this has been an ongoing thing with him.
Unbelievable. He's fighting it. He's really fighting it. One super here from Zachary Kelway says, I liked Ray being traded or cut in favor of Deshaun Jameson and Ronnie Bell. I think Bell will be the better receiver by next year. Fisher can't handle third tackle. Excuse me. You know, we asked Chris Forster, the offensive line coach, about Fisher, and before I could even get the question out, I said, is he more of a guard? Is he more of a tack? Before I could even get the question out, he's a guard. He's a guard. He's not a tackle. He's a guard. So I think there's his arm length kind of predicates that he play inside. And then Chris kind of went into talking about somebody else the other day, went into I think it was Poe. He was talking about Jason Poe playing center instead of guard. And he really feels like arm length is a major factor in, you know, what position you play. And that if you're a tackle, you have to have a certain arm length, and Fisher doesn't have that arm length. So I don't think Fisher's even going to get a look at offensive tackle, despite the fact he played tackle for Shepherd in college. That's the school that he played for in college. Back to Lance for a second. You know, it seems to me, you know, one of the other things I saw today was that did he fumble 1 snap or 2 snaps? And who was that on? Was it Israel again snapping? Because it seems like Israel's had a real struggle with the snaps. Do we know who the center was?
I don't know who the center was. It was with the second team. I don't know who they had working as a second team center today. I'll try to get a better look at that tomorrow. But there was 2. There was one early. There was one a little bit later. So he had 2. And we asked Kyle Shanahan about it after practice, and he said he wasn't sure, you know, exactly who it was on. He'll have to figure that out. He's like, I don't know exactly. You know, I'm glad I wasn't down there to see it, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know who it was on. It kind of just screwed up a couple of his reps. That's the biggest thing for the day.
I saw Vic Tafer, who covers the Raiders, says, I think Darnold already won the number 2 quarterback job. When I saw that, I was like, really? That really would be surprising to me. Because to me, I mean, Darnold's had some great practices. I mean, he had one practice on a weekend a couple weeks ago that just looked like, you know, he looked like the best quarterback on the field by a wide margin. But he's also had a lot of very kind of inconsistencies. He seems like if you take away that first read, he seems a little baffled. He seems a little off kilter, where I feel like Lance just, I don't know if it's because Lance has been in the offense more or if Lance is just a better quarterback, but he just looks more comfortable. Even if his first read is not there, he looks more comfortable kind of surveying the field than Sam Darnold to me. And I also think that Lance has thrown the ball down the field with a little bit more accuracy than Sam Darnold. So I don't know exactly how you grade that out. And I know the completion percentages may say one thing, but that's just my sense of it, is that that Lance seems a little bit more accurate, and he's a little bit more decisive in his movements out there.
Yeah, I don't know where I don't know how Vic came to that conclusion, unless it was from talking to people, because it wasn't based off of anything that we saw on the field today. Because Lance was the first guy off the, you know, he was running with the 2s throughout practice today. So I don't really know where that's coming from. I just don't know. This whole, you know, we've watched all the practices, and I agree with you. Like, there was a point after day 3 where I thought Darnold was the leader of the number 2 competition, but over the last, since day 4 on, Trey Lance has stacked day after day after day after day after day. of solid practices, and he just looked more. He just looked like the better quarterback to me over Darnold, and so I'm not sure where this you know certainty that Sam Darnold is the number two quarterback is coming from. I'm not seeing it, and maybe I'm missing something, but I've not seen it at all.
The other day, Mike Florio was on with Rich Eisen, and he was talking openly about the 49ers have made, I mean, it was like definitive. The 49ers have made a huge mistake by drafting Trey Lance. And he was so arrogant about it. It was like anybody who says that they haven't made a huge mistake is just a blind 49er fan that can't accept that their team made a colossal mistake in the draft. Is that Florio still bent on the fact that they took Lance over Mac Jones? Because to me, if you said to me, they made a huge mistake in drafting Lance. Okay, I mean, that's based on not very much. I would argue that they could make a huge mistake by trading Lance. I see an intriguing quarterback with upside potential who's clearly getting better. And, yeah, is it taking him longer than ideal in an ideal circumstance? Sure. Is it taking him longer than some quarterbacks? I guess. But there's a handful of quarterbacks. I could name them up and down, from Alex Smith to Steve Young to Kenny Stabler to Roger Staubach to Warren Moon. You name it, who have Aaron Rodgers, who have taken far longer to develop than Trey Lance. Why do you think there's such impatience? Do you think the Niners have the impatience and that they're sharing that impatience with these national pundits? Or do you think that it's the national pundits who are just like, you know what, we're creating this narrative? Because I don't know that Florio has been. I mean, I know he's an insider, and a lot of these insiders are right most of the time. I can't think of a Niner take where he has been right. I mean, it seems like he's more wrong than right all the time when it comes to the Niners. I don't know if it's personal, if he's anti-Niner. I have no concept of his biases one way or another. But his conclusion is like, yep, it's been a bad pick. It's official. Everybody knows it. And now it's all about they have to trade him. And I look at the trade as maybe a bad decision if they decide to move on, especially if they don't get a whole lot. What do you make of that?
The Florio's been negative on Trey Lance from the moment they made the pick. And, I look at it, maybe I look at that as some of what Florio being so negative on that is because he was so sure that it was going to be Mac Jones, and then it wasn't. When you're wrong, you push back and blame the other guy for and say that they made the mistake. The only other way that you could say that drafting Trey Lance was a major mistake, or whatever phrase he used, is just because of how much they gave up for him. And if he doesn't become a starter in San Francisco, then it's a mistake. But the only reason that would be the case is because Brock Purdy is playing at such a high level that they don't go back to him, right? And so it's just not something that I think is something to get totally vexed about. If you're a 49er fan, this guy and Chris Sims, those two have been on this anti-Trey Lance train from the moment that the selection was made. When it comes to Lance, I think what we're seeing from him right now is what I think everybody wished they had seen last year during training camp. Not that, not that things would have changed all that much in the way, the way it all went down, because who knows, he still could have gotten injured in week 2. But I think everybody would have liked it just would have been such a better time for him to be having this camp would have been last year instead of now. And worst case scenario, Brock Purdy goes out and has a hell of a year, and you have a really good backup. And if Brock Purdy at some point can't play or whatever, you got a really good quarterback to take the field in Trey Lance. And everybody wants to trade him, and unless you're getting a really high pick for him, then there's no way I trade Trey Lance. I think he's too valuable to this team with where they are at the moment. To have him here is much better than to trade him unless you're getting a first or a second round pick. I saw a thing today where it was a hypothetical. I think it was like ESPN put it out, where you trade you get a second and a third, but you're trading Lance a second and a sixth. And I'm like, that's not a good trade at all, because all you're doing is swapping seconds and getting a third. That wouldn't be a trade at all that I would make for Trey Lance.
Yeah,
I'd keep that guy on my team.
ESPN writer basically threw this out. Buccaneers would get Trey Lance, a 2024 second, and a 2024 sixth, and the Niners would get, theoretically, I guess, to move up in the second, because the Niners are a good team, the Bucs are a bad team. So maybe the Niners go from the back of the second to the top of the second. In addition, they would get the Bucs third. I mean, that just seemed that. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't sound like a lot. How do you feel like we're around the team, and you get a sense for the camaraderie? I mean, we're not interviewing the players yet. We get a chance to talk to a few of them at the podium, but we haven't been able to go into the locker room yet and really talk to the players. How do you think the locker room would respond if they made a trade like that and sent Trey Lance packing somewhere?
I don't think the locker room would be negatively impacted on that. I think I just don't see in that type of situation, because Sam Darnold is still a decent backup, and some of those guys might like the fact that Trey's getting a shot to go play somewhere else and actually play instead of be the backup here. So I don't think it would be a negative in the room. I think they'd be able to overcome that.
What do you think of Trey, though, as far as, do you think that if you told him right now, hey, you can go to Tampa, fresh start, you can go compete with Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask and maybe be the starter, or stay here and be the number 2 and come off the bench, what do you think he would prefer to do?
I think he would prefer to go to Tampa and compete to be the starter. He's a competitor, and I wouldn't expect him to want to stay in San Francisco to compete to be the backup. If he has a shot to go to another organization and be the starter, be the guy, I think he'd rather do that. I don't think you'd hear that from him. I don't think he'd say that, because that's not the way that he is, in terms of coming out and putting that pressure on the team, or putting that out in the media. But these guys are competitors. He wants to be the guy. He doesn't want to be the backup.
I hear you. Let me play you this thing from Eisen. From Eisen and Florio. Tell me what you think. Here it is.
Don't otherwise use their eyes.
Here we go.
I don't understand the sensitivity on the subject matter here, Mike.
I don't get it either. I think part of it is there are plenty of people who use their voice on social media but don't otherwise use their eyes and ears to listen and hear what's being said, and aren't following it as closely as you and I do, so they're stunned by the idea that Trey Lance would fall behind the guy who was seeing ghosts against the Patriots on Monday Night Football, and the guy that we just assume is done because it failed for him in his first couple of starts. And look at everything they gave up to get Lance. There's a certain organizational pride that goes into seeing Lance thrive, and you don't want to admit that your team screwed up, but they did. And they balanced it out by getting Brock Purdy with the last pick in the draft the next year.
Yeah.
It's not like they're walking around saying, oh, woe is us, we made a horrible mistake with Trey Lance. But they did make a horrible mistake with Trey Lance, and that's okay. You can't wallow in it. You just move on. And I think the main reason he's still on the roster is, as a third overall pick, the slotted rookie contract, as veteran backup contracts go for quarterbacks, this is a pretty good deal to keep him around at that number. They know they need 3. They would trade him if someone blew them away.
The boldness of which this guy talks about this is just unbelievable. So now, even though he's never been to camp one time this summer, never once has he laid his eyes on Trey Lance, he's decided that we all are not following the story as closely as he is. And that you heard him say it there. They made a huge mistake. They did make a huge mistake. I mean, is he willing to say that about Zach Wilson right now with the Jets? That the Jets made a huge mistake, or is that still to be determined? But with the Niners and Lance, it's like it's a stamped official. They made a huge mistake. Who's to say the huge mistake is not trading Trey Lance to Tampa for a couple picks. To me, that would seem to be potentially the huge mistake looming, not the mistake they've already made. It's just to me, it's just amazing that he's so cocksure that the Niners screwed this up and that he's watching it closer. And then Eisen, who I thought was an intelligent guy, he's sitting there agreeing with him.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First off, I'm going to go off of what you said with, is he saying this about Zach Wilson? I don't think that's a different situation. The Jets didn't trade multiple picks to get up and get Zach Wilson. He was already sitting there. So Zach Wilson is a bum. If he is, whatever. They only used one pick, whereas the 49ers used 3 for Lance. So there's a difference there, right? But the thing that gets me is this guy is saying, are people not listening? Who are we supposed to listen to, Mike? You? Or are we supposed to listen to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch? Because I'll tell you, I'm going to listen to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch every day of the week before I listen to you. And if you've listened to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch talk, they've both talked about how much they like Trey, and they've also talked about how they like Sam. And I don't think there's anything that's been said by the 49ers to the public that any of the uproar that he's talking about, I don't think that they've said anything to quell that. I think all of them have talked about how much they like Trey Lance, how much they still like him as much as they did the day that they drafted him, and all those kinds of things. So in terms of listening to that's the part that my question is, who are we supposed to listen to? Because if it's you, then no, I'm not listening to you, Mike. But if it's the 49ers, absolutely, that's who I pay attention to.
It's wild. It's wild that he would have that strong of an assertion. And you would think he would say, hey, you know what? I just spent the last week on the West Coast. I went to Niner camp for a week. I got a great sense from talking to the people around it. I got a great sense from putting my eyes on it. But he hasn't done any of that. He hasn't been out here. So it's like, what is your opinion based on? And he looked really bad in those 4 games. It's still, we're talking about 4 games for a guy who played 1 year between at the FCS level. I mean, it's a dramatic. You're holding Trey Lance to a standard where it's like, wow, if you're not immediately good, then you're just a bust. And then it's, if he's that level of a bust that definitively that he's no good, why would anybody want him? Why would you be advocating that anybody wants this guy? But instead you're like, it's almost like he wants the 49ers to be forced into a bad trade and to part ways with a guy that I think is their second best quarterback based on what I've seen. How did Jimmy Garoppolo, by the way, look today? The Raiders are a team that don't have their quarterback of the future. How did Jimmy look? How did Hoyer look? How did their Purdue rookie look? Did you get a chance to see any of the Raider QBs today in action?
I didn't get a chance to see. The rookie O'Connell.
Aiden
That's
O'Connell.
The rookie and he's from Purdue.
Right.
I didn't get a chance to see him. I did get a chance to see Garoppolo and a little bit of Brian Hoyer, who is their backup. Brian Hoyer still looks like the guy that was throwing interceptions for the 49ers. He had a pick 6 today. Threw it right to our guy, Taylor Hawkins, the safety that I think we both like a lot. That's really, I think he's been having a heck of a camp. Threw it right to him, and Hawkins grabbed it, took it the other direction. Jimmy Garoppolo, he looked like Jimmy Garoppolo. He was dealing in the parts that we got to see. Now, again, I didn't see everything because they were so far away. But when they came onto that middle field and they were doing some of the move the ball stuff, I saw him I saw him hitting throws. Then I saw him out there working the offense against the 49ers starting defense in a hurry up, move the ball situation. I saw him go 6 of 7, driving right down the field with a touchdown throw to Austin Hooper. And it just looked like Jimmy Garoppolo, the same Jimmy Garoppolo that was doing that as the quarterback for the 49ers, except for he was doing it with the Raiders. Remember, it's not like he's over there he's not like he's playing with a bunch of no names either. Austin Hooper's a hell of a tight end. Devontae Adams is one of the best wide receivers in the game. When they get Josh Jacobs back, if they're able to work out his contract, that's a really good running back. The Raiders have a really good offense for Jimmy Garoppolo to put up numbers. In terms of wins and losses, the defense is going to have to come through for him. But Jimmy Garoppolo looked like Jimmy Garoppolo looked last year with the 49ers when he was playing the best ball we've seen him play. But that was only two series and really one full series. And I think that whether it's myself or a lot of the other people that are out there watching today, that's really most of what we're going to be talking about is just 1 or 2 series.
How did Javon Hargrave look? I heard Hargrave had a sack at Jimmy G today.
I didn't see that. It was hard because of where we're sitting, and all the guys that are in front of us. When I say guys, I'm talking about the players, the Raiders players along the sideline, and they were so far away. It was really hard to get a good read on the defensive line compared to like when we're standing right there, and I can really just focus in on the line and then take my eyes off of that to see what's going on downfield for the quarterback. So I didn't see that. Unfortunately, I missed that. The one time though that I did notice a guy getting where it would have been a sack was Austin Bryant coming around the edge. He would have absolutely lit up Brian Hoyer if he had a chance.
Well, that's good to hear because Bryant's a key guy, and he was starting to come on. We talked to him just the other day, and I'm encouraged that maybe Bryant can give them a little edge rush because they badly need it. I heard Miles Hartsfield had a pick six of Brian Hoyer today. Did you get a chance to see that at all?
I didn't see Hartsfield with a pick six. The only the pick six that I saw was Taylor Hawkins. Taylor Hawkins had a pick six that took it the other way. I'm not sure if maybe somebody misidentified that, but it was 41 on the interception.
How about Purdy? What did Purdy look like? The final numbers, you can debate them. Some people have 10 of 15. Other people have 11 of 16. But an interception, and I guess he threw a couple touchdowns in the red zone, maybe one of them to CMC. Supposedly hooked up with CMC on a touchdown, and it led to a brief Niner Raiders scuffle. Did you see that at all?
I thought it was an interesting day for Purdy. He started off hot and then kind of had it's one of those deals where he started off really good, had a couple of really nice throws to open up, and then I felt like he kind of struggled a little bit. I only have him down for one touchdown. There was a throw to McCaffrey in the red zone that it was in the left flat. McCaffrey was able to catch it and turn it up and get into the end zone. The other one that was ruled that some people have called a touchdown, it was a little screen out to the right side. The reason I didn't consider it a touchdown was because there was whistles blowing pretty quickly once he started to get past the initial wave. It was a little screen out to the right. It was going to be a nice gain. I don't know if it's a touchdown without the whistles because pursuit angles and all that kind of stuff. But you look through Purdy's day. He started off hot. He kind of fizzled out a little bit from there. He was just looking at his numbers real quick. He was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 with a touchdown to open up. Then he went through a little bit of a downturn, and then this is where training camp stats, you got to take them with a grain of salt, right? Because he got his opportunity in the move the ball during the hurry up session that they had. It was the last one of the day. He only was 4 of 9. That doesn't look good, right? 4 of 9 doesn't sound good, but he moved the offense down the field, had a couple of completions, followed by a couple of incompletions. 3rd and 10, he completes it, and then there's another first down throw, a spike, and then a couple of incompletions to finish off. So, I don't know exactly what the hard part about it is because we're where we were, we couldn't see the scoreboard with the time and stuff. So I'm not sure why they stopped the drive because the last incompletion came on first and 10. So I'm not sure if they ran out of time or if they just wanted to get the next group on. I thought I thought he was okay. It wasn't. I didn't think he was bad. I don't think he was good. I thought he was okay. It was one of those training camp practices where you make some. I do have to say this when it comes to the positive with Brock Purdy. We talk a lot about his velocity and where he is with his arm. He had a route today. He threw an out to Brandon Ayuk today. It was about 15 to 20 yards, about 15, I guess, to the right side. And that is as strong of a throw as I've seen from Brock Purdy since he's come back. It was one of the few times where we've seen him throw a deep out and throw it right just rip it in there. And it was a really nice ball. That one I could see pretty good because with the defense had slid down the field a little bit further. So we got a better view of it. And that I would say that was a really nice throw when you look at where he is coming back and the velocity that he was able to put on that, because that's a big boy throw.
Brock, we're not going to see Brock Sunday, right? Who do you think starts? You think Lance starts?
I would start Trey Lance if I was Kyle Shanahan. I would put Trey Lance on the field first, and then I would probably, I'm not
play
sure
him a half, or I'd like to see him play a significant amount of time.
I would almost, to be fair to the two guys, because you can't keep that second team offensive line on the field for the entire game. I would almost do kind of like what they did last year.
Series by series kind of a thing?
Yeah. In Minnesota last year, that's what they did. They went series by series between Sudfeld and Purdy. I'd almost do something like that, just to make sure that they're getting reps with the same offensive line and that kind of thing, and let them play it out. That's the direction I would go, but I would start with, I think Lance has earned the right to be the first guy on the field.
I do too, and I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him get an extended run, and just see what he can establish a little rhythm. I mean, that's if you want to say, what has camp not allowed for. It doesn't allow any quarterback to really get into a rhythm. If it's going to take you 5, 6, 7 snaps to get into a rhythm, well, you're not going to get into a rhythm in training camp because how many times in camp are you going to get 5 or 6 or 7 snaps in a row? Usually you're going 4 snaps and you're going out, or you're moving the ball, move the ball drill, and the whole thing could be 10, 12 snaps. So it's like the one thing, I mean, Brock, I think that we've seen a couple times in the team drill get into a little bit of a rhythm, and you can see it. I think I've saw Darnold get into rhythm maybe one day. I don't know that I've seen Trey really get into a rhythm, and that's what I'd love to see in this first preseason game. What would you like to see in the first preseason game? Who are you most eager to see on Sunday?
In terms of like just overall, or
quarterbacks or overall, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really I'm looking forward to seeing Jair Brown. That's if I can only watch one guy on Sunday, I want to watch Jair Brown. That's all I want to watch him. That's all I want to see, because we haven't been able to see him fully play football to this point. There's so many times that we watch him in practice and he's in the hole, but they don't tackle, so he doesn't make the play because they can't do it right there, right? And so I'm looking forward to watching that guy go out there and just play football, because I think he's going to be all over the field making plays. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Jair Brown get after it. And I'm looking forward to seeing Marcelino McCurry ball as well. That's another one. The linebackers.
Any of those linebackers look good today, by the way?
Again, that's a tough one, because we didn't really see a whole lot of them because of the way that practice was laid out. The first team defense was what we saw most of the time, and they seemed to struggle. And Jimmy Garoppolo, like I said, he went up the field, and even Brian Hoyer, other than his interception, kind of moved the ball a little bit against the number 2. So I wouldn't say any of them really stood out today. But I would like to see what they can do in a game situation. Also, Javon Kinlaw. Can Javon Kinlaw go out there, and Kevin Givens and Austin Bryant, can they go out there and dominate the Raiders? Probably their second offensive line would be what's going to be on the field. Can they go out there and dominate that? That's the kind of thing that you're looking for. And then with the 49ers, the starting offensive line probably won't be out there. So what is happening with Nick Zakelj? Where is he? John Feliciano, I think he's a pretty good player. I think we know what he is, but I still want to see him and Matt Pryor. So things like that. And then can Cameron Latu catch the ball? Can Braden Willis push his way up, in terms of being a threat as a tight end? Because today it was Ross Belly. He was the guy that was out there first up with George Kittle out.
It's funny. I'm Brad Graham on Twitter says, I've been saying this since the draft that I believe the 49ers will carry 4 tight ends. He says Kittle's injury almost proves the point. I don't see a world where Shanahan feels comfortable rostering just 2 rookie tight ends behind Kittle. Willis has been the best rookie tight end, and they won't cut Latu. What's your feeling on that competition? I mean, Latu was a 3rd-round pick. He's played very little tight end. He came to Bama as a defensive end. He clearly has, good size and strength. He's, an athleticism. You can see kind of the framework of why people would like him as a prospect, because he moves naturally, and he's he's a legit 6'4" and change. He's a legit 250 pounds. He carries his weight well. He carries his pads well, but he's just not catching the ball. Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll carry 4 tight ends? And if so, which one do you think gets cut?
I think they'll carry 4. I think it makes the most sense for them to carry 4, just the reasons you said. Because right now I really like. There's things that I like out of Cameron Law too. I like his blocking ability. That is something that stands out. Um, he's better at that than Willis. Willis is better with his hands at this point, and I think that maybe Latu can bring that along and figure that out. And so I do think they'll carry 4, and I think it's gonna if I'm picking the 4, it's George Kittle and Ross Dwelly, and then the 2 rookies. Those would be my 4. That because I want a tight end that can catch. That gives me 3 tight ends that can catch, 2 that can block at a pretty decent level. Charlie Warner gets cut because Charlie Warner can't catch.
Yeah, he really can't catch. I mean, and it's really clear. Cosmo mentions an interesting name here. He says, you never know with Latu. He could be a late bloomer like Wesley Walls. The Niners drafted Wesley Walls out of, I think it was Ole Miss or something like that back in the day, like second round, third round. They wound up cutting him. And he wound up in Carolina and had a really good career. The Niners drafted Caden Smith out of Stanford a few years ago. Wound up cutting him at the 53 cut down. He wound up going to the New York Giants and having a pretty decent NFL career. I've kind of lost track of what Caden's done in the recently, but sometimes you can wind up, you can overreact to struggles early, especially in an offense like this where there's just so much to know, so much to learn, so much to keep track of. And a young guy, to me, what I see is a talented young guy who's having some concentration issues because his head's spinning, because he's out there thinking about down and distance and his keys and the formation and, all the pre-snap stuff. He's just not out there playing. Where I think if Cam Latu were, if this were a year from now, I bet you he's moving much faster. I bet you he's a little stronger. I bet you he knows the offense a lot better, and he might be a significant contributor. So I don't know. I'd be afraid to cut him, but on a team inside their Super Bowl window, it's hard to have too many roster spots with guys that aren't playing particularly well. So it's going to be a challenge to see how this thing comes down August 29th.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I just think that when it comes a lot to, I think that one of the biggest reasons they got him was to replace Warner. They're looking in the Latu and the Willis picks. They were looking to replace what they had already, trying to build for the future and all those types of things. Latu, like I said, he's a really good pass blocker. Does okay in the run game as well. So I think from that standpoint, he can play for them. And then you got to hope that the hands comes along with it. And it could be a situation like Wesley Walls. Wesley Walls, part of the reason that the Flyers weren't all that ecstatic with him is I think Brent Jones was still there at the time. And it's tough to unseat that guy because Brent Jones was always a heck of a tight end back in those days. So I could be wrong. I might get my timing wrong a little bit on that, but I could see Latu being a guy who might struggle a little bit up front, but over the course of a 4-year rookie contract is going to give you more good than he gives you bad.
Did any Raiders stand out today? I mean, I know you're out there pretty much watching the Niners, but sometimes, you're just sitting there at practice and you're like, wow, look at that guy. Any Raiders stand out to you?
I can't say there was really one that really popped off the screen, or popped off to me. You had Marcus Peters is the one that came up with the pick today. Jimmy Garoppolo working with, who was it? Hunter Renfrow, right?
Yeah.
The receiver, that's a really nice matchup for him. And same thing with Austin Hooper. They have a really good group of guys out there in terms of their skill position guys, the Raiders do. And so I think those are about the only ones that really stood out. Chandler Jones, obviously, and Max Crosby, they just are so quick off the ball. But the Flyers offensive line, I think, is really been underrated by people.
Jack, we'll let you go. This is, great breakdown. I don't know if you saw this story today on 49er Web Zone, but according to Kyle Shanahan, I guess he reiterated that if the Niners had found a way to win that NFC Championship game and vault themselves into the Super Bowl last year against Kansas City, that they wouldn't have gone with Josh Johnson as the quarterback, that they would have signed Phillip Rivers to be the quarterback. Now, that would have been a very odd Super Bowl if the Niners were in the Super Bowl with a guy that they had signed literally a week before.
Yeah, that would have been very interesting. Uh, whether it would have been as a starter or the back of Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Because that's the other thing that came out today. Jimmy Garoppolo saying that the goal all along was for him to be ready to go for the Super Bowl in terms of his rehab as well. So it would have been maybe Garoppolo's the starter in the Super Bowl and Phillip Rivers would have been his backup. Who knows exactly how that would have played out? But that was the other thing that came up today because we asked him about it and he said, he couldn't have played it. He couldn't have played, but earlier on, but everything with his ramp up was geared towards him being ready to go for the Super Bowl if the Friars had made it there. So that would have been an interesting thing. Jimmy Garoppolo, Phillip Rivers leading the 49ers into the Super Bowl.
Hey, TDP and JP Mason, it seems like day after day after day, at least in the practices here in Santa Clara, really shined and really looked incredible. Did they continue their impressive summer in Las Vegas today, or were they quiet?
They were a little bit more quiet than they've been in Santa Clara, but they both had a couple of, they both had some moments in terms of on the ground. Mason had a couple of nice runs, and so did Ty Davis Price. Ty Davis Price has just been a heck of a turnaround for him here in year two. And Christian McCaffrey too. We talked about his receiving touchdown, and he had a couple of really nice pops too on the ground, 8-10 yard gains up the middle, around the sides. Whether he's running through or around the Raiders defense, he looked good as well.
How about Jake Moody? Any booming field goals today?
I'm glad you asked. I was going to throw that out there anyway. Yeah, he had two. He had two from 48 that were no doubters.
Have you kept track? I know we've kept track of a lot of the stats for the quarterbacks, but have you kept track of the kicker stats? What kind of percentage do you think Moody's hitting in preseason or in training camp? Because there's no question he's demonstrated that he has once in every 25 years kind of a leg. I mean, he's got a tremendous leg. Nobody would ever question the leg strength. But as far as accuracy, it seems like I haven't seen him miss more than once all summer. Have you been keeping track at all of what he's done?
I haven't been keeping track as closely as I should. He's missed a couple, but I think one of them was from 62 or 3 yards or something like that the other day. He came up just short, and he's pulled one. I think he might have pulled one or two, over the course of OTAs and training camp here, where he's missed, like I said, just a couple. But for the most part, he's been really good. And you talk about, you just said it right now, one of maybe like once in every 25 years type of guy in terms of his leg, kind of like what Sebastian Janikowski, the guy that used to kick for the Raiders. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Because this guy, when he kicks the ball, I mean, think about if he's hitting from 50 yards with regularity, the 49ers offense can move the ball to the 35 all the time, almost always. They don't usually struggle moving the ball between the 20s. And if they can get to the 35 or 40 yard line, and you have a guy that's going to give you 3 points at that point, it's a cheat code for the 49ers when it comes to points.
Timmy says he's kicking 91% so far. I've got all the kicks plotted. All right, there you go.
Good job,
Timmy. Way to go, Timmy. Hey, were there any fans or no fans?
There were some people there. I don't know if they were fans or if they were family. I know there was a family section that was away from the media that actually had a much better view than we did. But I think that was family, and I don't think today was a fan day for the Raiders.
Now, was this the kind of practice that would make you go to like Big Five Sporting Goods and buy some binoculars for tomorrow? I've got my binoculars when I go to the games at Levi's and we're sitting up in the press box and they're way down the field. I like to get on the binoculars and watch on the binoculars. But I've got great binoculars and I'm sitting there with my elbows planted. It's hard when you're out in the field and you're sweating and you got sweat in your eye and you're focusing and there's glare. But it sounds like the Raiders have set this up for, you might want to bring your binoculars.
If I could get binoculars that would allow me to see the entire offense through the binoculars, that kind of thing, then I would. But I don't think I don't think you can really get that full view. Maybe you can. I have some binoculars here, but they're not as good as I really need. And so I used them a couple of times, but put them away pretty quickly because it's just so hard when you're just like zeroing in on, a few guys to really get a view of an understanding of what was taking place. So I was just doing the best that I could with my eyes. And when the flares were, like I said, on that closer field, it was a little bit easier.
I don't want to give away your location, but is that the over your left shoulder, the Al Davis burning cauldron? I see smoke coming off your left shoulder there, and the way Maui is burning down today, I got to be very, very, cautious with the background. Are you anywhere near the stadium? Is that the eternal cauldron of Al Davis over your left shoulder, or what exactly is burning over your left shoulder, Jack?
No, that's a little symbol I put out there to let everybody know I want all the smoke, right? That's what. No, that's actually. It looks like it's right underneath my window, but it's actually the building. There's a building on the other side. I think there's a restaurant right there, so it's just the heat, the steam coming from whatever they're cooking coming up right there. Yeah.
Okay, so no, you're not burning down. You're not you're not sticking with this live stream through evacuate at once.
No, I'm not like the dog in the middle of the fire, so it's fine.
So would you, if you were to do it again, would you go? Was it worthy of going, or did you think, you know what, the Raiders, pushed us so far back, it's almost like not worth going?
No, it was totally worth going because even though the view isn't exactly what I'd like, it's good enough to understand what's going on and be able to get a feel for what's taking place. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is to be able to see this as we go through all the way, And I got to say this: as bad as the view was, one of the cool things was that the PR person for the 49ers started taking us around to where we were going to talk with Kyle Shanahan after practice. And to get over there, we're walking around right as Trey Lance is doing his drill, that hurry up process, right, getting down the field. And so I got to the point where I could see, and I just started walking really slow. I mean, like I was moving, so they couldn't tell me that I'd stopped, but I was walking really slow, and I got to be able to be at ground level watching the offense with Trey Lance operate. And that is partly why I say like that one throw that he made to Ronnie Bell was so pretty, because you're on the field in the end zone looking down, and you could see the open, you could see the hole open, and you could see how he's throwing the ball into the window well before the receiver gets there. Like you can see the anticipation and the timing that it takes. It's one thing to watch it from above or watch it on a video afterwards, but to see it happen in real time from the end zone like that was awesome.
Do you think Trey looked good enough today that word of this would get around the league? Or were there enough people covering this thing? I don't know if you can tell what the whole total size of the media was. You got two media bases. You get the Raider media, you get the Niner media, and sometimes when teams get together like this, then other media from other parts of the country come in because they figure, hey, this is a good time. I can kill two birds with one stone. Did Trey play well enough today that you think that there would be people going, you know what? The word of his kind of, obviously there's some word circulating that he's not been good. And I think you and I kind of are of the belief that he has been pretty good this summer. Do you think he was good enough today to change that narrative? Or do you think it's going to need to come in the preseason games?
I think to an extent, it just depends on if the national media wants to pick up on what's being said. One of the Raider reporters that was here was on a stream with somebody else and was talking about how impressed he was with Trey Lance today, and he hadn't been up until that point, and I get it, and I'm right there with him. I was impressed. Like I said, he had a bad start to the day, but when you look at what he did when he was put out there to move the ball in that situation, he did well. I don't know if he showed enough though. I don't know if that one series is enough to get people excited. But I think if you're an NFL team that needs a quarterback and you are willing to give up what it takes to get him, I would go out and do it with Trey Lance, because I think Trey Lance is a very good quarterback. It's just too, like I said, it's too bad that this wasn't a year ago and this wasn't last year, and we weren't having this conversation during camp last year, because I don't know, things might not be different again because the injury still might have occurred, but dang, it would have just been a lot more fun for everybody that was covering him to talk about how good he did instead of having people yell at you when you're having to describe a bad day.
Yeah. Batman 29 says there's always a third round bust. This year it's Latu. That might be premature, but so far he looks very much like a third round bust. All right, Jack, you're in Vegas. You're off tonight. The Niners practice early, so you can't stay out late gambling. But what's the plan for the night? Are you gonna play some dice? You gonna are you a kind of guy that likes to hit the tables, the pool, the machines, you gonna play Keno over breakfast? What's the plan? You going? You got every restaurant in the world is there. Where are you gonna take your girl tonight?
I'm all by myself. I'm in Vegas by myself, but I've also been up since 3:30 this morning because I flew in this morning. So it's been a long day already.
So you might have to crash.
I'm gonna chill out for a little bit because it's been football all day long. I did a show on my channel. I'm doing this one now. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to let my stomach settle down, and then I was told to go hit the buffet that they have here.
Ooh, where are you at?
I'm at the South Point at the end of the
Yes,
strip.
the South Point buffet. I've heard of that.
And I was told by Ryan Sakamoto, the Beast Rider, that you got to hit this one spot down there. And I walked by it when I went to grab lunch after I got back in. And I gotta let it build up a little bit because if you're gonna pay $27 for a buffet, you got to go do some damage.
Seriously, yeah. No, you can't. Don't fill up on bread either.
No.
Make sure you get a lot of prime rib. I usually go a whole round of prawns with like cocktail sauce. Do a nice little base of seafood. Then I'll go a little prime rib, maybe. Couple slices of prime rib for sure.
Yeah, they got the prime rib at this one, and like I said, yeah, I'm gonna.
But can you go? Can you go to the buffet solo? That's also kind of a bad look.
I got no shame in my game, man. If there's a buffet that needs to be hammered, I'm gonna go hit that thing.
Jack, great stuff, man. Safe travels. You're coming back before the game, but we'll talk to you. We'll see you at camp. I guess Tuesday, I think, is when they're back at it. And have a great couple days in Vegas. Enjoy tomorrow's practice. Thank you very much for streaming with us today and giving the Krueg Show audience some of the intel, because there's no other way to get it. And you're outstanding at what you do. So keep it rolling, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Larry. It's always fun.
There you go. The great Jack Hammer in the house. He is really, really good. Really, really good. And Jeff, definitely check out his channel. All right, we're going to hit a couple chats, a couple thoughts about the Trey Lance that I want to share with you, and then we will call it quits. Now, it's 6:30, which is in an hour and roughly 20 minutes. Vish Kumar and Jesse Naylor and I on the Krueg Show channel with the Thursday night big show. That's coming up at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. But first, let's throw a word to our sponsors, and I'll come back and hit the chat. Coming up next on the Krueg Show. But first, a word from our title sponsor, Pig in a Pickle.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it. Hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show on this August 10th afternoon. ESPN had this hypothetical trade today, and Jack and I kind of discussed it already. It had the Buccaneers trading for Trey Lance, and it was Buccaneers trading, getting Trey Lance, a Niners second-round pick, and a Niners sixth-round pick, and the Niners getting the Bucs second and the Bucs third. So basically the Niners, all they would get for Trey Lance is move up in the second round, and they would get 1 third-round draft choice. And I don't know where you guys are, and I'd love to hear in the chat, there's no way. There is no way, no how that I'm doing that trade. I mean, there's just no way. To me, the value of Trey Lance as a backup quarterback option as an insurance policy is worth way more than a third-round draft choice. And you've gone this far with Trey Lance, and he's improved this significantly. No way. In fact, I really believe that if Trey plays well this preseason, and I expect him to play well, that the Niners are going to get significant offers, a second-round pick and a player type thing. And then the question is, what do they do at that point? But there's no way I'm moving Trey Lance to move up in round 2 and a third-round draft choice. No way. No way. And I can't imagine that John Lynch would do that either. Unless I'm reading this wrong. Fish and Chips says, here's 2 pounds. Congrats, Larry. You've made my 23 content roster. Look at that. Fish and Chips. I'm on the content roster, baby. Things are good. Things are looking up. By the way, we are at 21,251 subs. So if you're one of the nearly 500 people in the room right now, and you've yet to hit like and subscribe, please do. If you hit like, it just helps other people find the stream. And if you hit subscribe and hit that notification bell, every time we go live, you'll just get a notification that we're going live. And so you never have to miss any of the Krueg Show content. Just by the way, what is the Krueg Show content in the next couple days? Let me tell you what's coming up on the channel, because we're always scheduling things down the road a few days in advance. All right, today we are visiting with Jack Hammer, and then at 6:30, Jesse Naylor and Vish on the big show. That's tonight at 6:30. Tomorrow at noon Pacific, Al Sacco is going to stop by. I really enjoy Al and his content that he creates in his podcast. He does a real nice job. He'll be by at noon to talk a little bit about day 2 of practices in the desert. Brad Graham's going to stop by tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll visit with Brad and get his thoughts on training camp. Brad was in the stands for much of training camp, or definitely all of it that was available to the fans. He was out there, I know, for a big chunk of it. So we'll get his thoughts on where the Niners look going into the preseason schedule and his thoughts on what he's seen thus far from camp. I'm really eager to talk ball with Brad. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, Damon Bruce stops by the channel, and we'll chop it up with D. Bruce. Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on the West Coast, noon on the East Coast, the coach will stop by, and we'll get his thoughts on all things Niners, and we'll get his thoughts on Florio. I'd love to hear what the coach has to say about Florio and Eisen and what they're saying about Trey Lance. Sunday is game day, and the Niners kick it off at 1 o'clock on the West Coast against the Raiders. 1 o'clock start West Coast time, and maybe Vegas and California on the same time right now. I don't really know, but it is 1 o'clock Pacific. So at 4 o'clock Pacific, when that game ends, we'll do a full Niner post-game show. I'm hoping the coach will be in the house. Maybe John Dickinson. We'll see if we can invite JD. Bay Area Baller is going to join us. My son Kevin's going to join us. I'm really looking forward to the post-game Sunday, and join us. So hopefully we'll get a couple thousand people in the room for post-game and really chop it up. So there you go. Brother Bob says Kevin's dad stopped talking Lance trades. It's old. It's not old. This is new. This is today. This is ESPN put this out today. Florio's talking about trading him today. That's, I get it if we're living on some rumor from 5 weeks ago. Just because you don't want to see it and just because I don't want to see it doesn't mean that we should bury our heads in the sand and ignore the dialogues happening. We're going to report the dialogue. We're going to discuss the trades, and we're going to give our opinion. If I was convinced, Brother Bob, that there was absolutely nothing to it, I'd ignore it. But I'm not. I'm not convinced there's nothing to it. I don't know. I'll say this. I can't say it louder. I wouldn't make the trades that I've seen, but aren't you? I mean, even if you're the biggest Lance fan, think about this logically. You're the biggest Trey Lance fan. You think Trey Lance is going to be the best quarterback in the future of the Niners. You think he's better than Brock, better than Darnold, better than Allen. He's the guy. You're in that camp. You're all in on Trey. You're not even a slight bit bothered or interested in all of these national pundits who, I don't know, individually you could say they don't have credibility, but collectively, don't they have credibility? And we've heard this now from Rappaport, Schefter, Florio. I have the least respect for Florio, but all these guys, Vic Tafer saying what he's hearing is that Darnold's already the number 2 guy. Where are these people hearing this? Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are the people that will make the decision. I'm there in camp. We're talking to these guys. They're not saying anything like that. They're saying Trey's improved dramatically, that it's noticeable, that they're impressed. Now, it all goes into the category of what do you expect them to say, right? There's that. They've never, people, the other people that have pushed back and say, you know what, they've only said great things about Trey. Okay. They've only said great things about everybody. Name me the Niner player that Shanahan and Lynch have ripped. Go ahead. I'll wait. They don't rip anybody. Why? Because it's not smart. You don't rip your own players. You only say positive things. They're going to say positive things about everybody until the day they're traded or cut. They're going to say, I guarantee you, if you chart it, the press conferences between now and the 29th of August, there will be times where Niner coaches, whether it be Shanahan or in this case, the general manager, John Lynch, there will be Niner representatives who will sit on that podium and say glowing things about players that they waive. So talk's cheap. None of it really matters at the end of the day as far as what they say. It's more about what they do. But I don't get it. I don't get the absolute conviction that Florio has that the Niners made a colossal mistake. I wouldn't even feel comfortable saying that. I would say, hey, you know what? There are people that think that the Niners have made a colossal mistake, or some have said people have made a colossal mistake, or that the Niners have made a mistake. But to come out and basically say the Niners have made a huge mistake when we're watching Trey Lance, he looks pretty good. Now, I've watched training camp for years and years and years. This guy's 6'4", he's 225, he's athletic, he throws a hell of a football. Last year, his ball wobbled a ton. This year, he's throwing a much cleaner ball. Last year, he ran the ball a lot. This year, he's operating from the pocket. Last year, he's completing 55%. This year, he's completing closer to 70%. I'm seeing improvement. And to me, there's no doubt I'm seeing improvement. So I don't know. It just boggles my mind that somebody like Florio would come out and say this. And then for Eisen to sit there and be like, yeah. Like he didn't push back at all. It wasn't like, hey, I don't know, Mike. He's looking pretty good. Maybe they'll keep him. It wasn't even a discussion. It was like, yeah, Mike, you're right. Your premise is right. Your conclusions are right. Damn, Mike, you're smart. There was no pushback at all. No, like, you think if I was Rich Eisen, I would send like, Well, is the huge mistake drafting Trey, or is the huge mistake giving up on him after not even 4 full games? I mean, that to me is a more interesting discussion than to just be like, yeah, well, you're probably right. Yet that's where they were. It's unbelievable. Brother Bob says, it's repetitive from you. I'm a Niners fan. I hear it, but I mean, I'm just trying to cover the story. I have no agenda. I'm the one who said draft Trey Lance. So, I feel like I've got a vested interest in seeing that evaluation all the way through to the finish line. And while other people have doubts, I still believe that Trey Lance is a franchise quarterback in the future. I see it. I see the improvement. It's also, sometimes you got to project a little bit. Sometimes you got to look at, okay, where was the player? Why was the player underdeveloped? Is there reasons for it? And in Trey's case, there are reasons for it. He didn't play. There was the pandemic. He had a 1-game season. Then he had a redshirt year. Then he had an injury year. I mean, there are reasons that we're here in year 3, and he's still very much undefined as a prospect. If there were no reasons, if he had just stunk it up, it would be one thing. And we could say, well, you know what? They've given him 2 years, and he stunk it up both years. But that's not the case. That's not the case at all. I mean, I'm okay with saying, hey, I don't need the Niners to be right in everything they do. I'll sit here and say they were wrong, but I want to see him fail before I'm going to tell you that he's failed. I'm not going to watch a glimpse of him failing early on when almost every Hall of Fame quarterback that ever made the Hall did the exact same thing. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the best right now. Aaron Rodgers in the Hard Knocks is being praised and treated like he's Joe Montana, Tom Brady, John Elway, Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, all rolled into one. Like, he is the greatest that's ever walked the earth. Guess what? He sat for 4 years, and then his first year he went 6-10. So, I mean, and that's the greatest who played, full career at Cal for Jeff Tedford. And he sat for 4 years and then went 6-10. So, you know what? It takes time. And it's sometimes when I see the over the top Trey can't do it. I mean, the people that are over the top Trey can do it, and don't want to hear anything else, and he's the best. Okay. Those people get annoying too, because it's like, you sound like you have an agenda. I'm just saying I'm not ready to give up on him. I'm not sitting here saying, you know what, he's better than all their quarterbacks and he's going to be better and this and that. I think he's going to be damn good, but I'm in the camp of I don't know yet. But when I say I don't know yet, I mean I don't know yet. Like, I don't know if he's going to be good, but I don't know if he's going to be bad. So to sit there and be like, I'm convinced he's bad this early in makes me think that there's something else at play. Like, somebody's got some other agenda, some other thing, or either somebody's whispering behind the scenes to these insiders and we're not privy to that, and that's possible, or there's some guys who are they're reading the tea leaves and they have just decided that Sam Darnold is going to be number 2 and Brandon Allen is going to be number 3 and Trey Lance is going to be traded. Otherwise, I don't get it. I really just don't get it. Fish and Chips says, here's a couple pounds. He says, can Jed Dork insider trade us a ring? Uh-oh. Now we're going at Jed. I'm not going to touch the insider trading story on Jed because I don't know enough about it, and I just don't know enough about it. I don't know how much credence there is to it. I don't, well, I'll wait and see. I'll let somebody else be first in line on that story. I'll gladly be the, chase that story from behind. Flav says, I would take a higher second and a third rounder for Trey all day. The chances he's a good quarterback for the 49ers at this point are almost 0%. If he ends up being one, it won't be for years. He'll be gone. Well, I mean, that's another angle on this thing that Flav is hitting, which is how long can the 49ers afford to have Trey Lance on the roster as the backup, This year he's on the roster at $9 million. The other thing about this is like anybody take this rumor coming out on this Bucks trade. The Bucks are like $400,000 beneath the cap. They're not making this trade. You can't make this trade right now if you're Tampa Bay. Trey Lance is a $9 million cap hit. I mean, if they want to make that trade and throw in Devin White, like they've been rumored to be shopping the linebacker, he makes $11 million. They could move Devin White in those picks, and then they could take on Trey Lance. But the Buccaneers cannot make that trade that was rumored today. They cannot send picks for Lance, take on a $9 million cap hit with Trey Lance. They can't do it. They're $400,000 or $500,000 underneath the cap. If they move Devin White in the deal, or somebody making $9 million or more, or $9.5 million or more, then they could make that deal. But that's the big question. Is the only thing that makes me feel like there could be a trade is that the cap. How long can the 49ers go? This is probably the last year that they could afford to have Trey on their cap as a backup. Next year, I think his number jumps to like $17 million. So I don't think next year they could have him back on the cap as a backup. It just doesn't make sense. You're not paying your backup quarterback $17 million. I believe that's what the cap would mandate for next year. And I could be wrong on that. Somebody could look that up, but I thought I saw $17 million. So there has to be, the Niners do have to make a decision. It's not like they can just be like, well, we'll just keep Trey and we'll keep Brock and we'll just keep them both and we'll keep them both forever and we'll just see where it all goes. No, it doesn't. The cap really doesn't allow you to do that. So the only reason I could see for moving off of Trey Lance would be at this point. And even so, I would rather do it at the end of the year, but I guess you could make an argument about the cap. And also the reality is he makes $9 million this year. So if you want to, you can't cut him without there being a cap hit. If you trade him, there's not that cap hit. So maybe if you traded him, you could then take that $9 million and roll it into some of the Brandon Ayuk extension and some of the guys you want to pay in 2024, possibly. I mean, I guess that's an angle on the thing. But if you're just talking about personnel evaluation and trying to make good decisions with your football players, I don't get it. I really don't get it. We got this one from Sawdoff. He says, Larry, acknowledge that your chat is overwhelmingly Lance haters. It's stupid. We're one team. There's definitely a lot of them in there for sure. So, I mean, I don't know. As far as my chat, I don't know if I would say, hey, it's my chat. We're negative. We got this one from Flav. Let's see what happens when he can get hit. There's a reason you haven't seen him in rhythm in training camp. He's inconsistent on a play-by-play basis, and the game will likely be too fast for him for years, in my opinion. Okay. I mean, I hear you. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're absolutely wrong. But what I see is an improving player who throws the hell out of the football. And when it comes to downfield passing, he might be the best passer they have. And then when I see him, he's a very conscientious kid. He really wants to get better. And I see the way the players react to him. I think they would follow him. You can't be a leader if nobody follows you. And I think that's Baker Mayfield's problem. I think that might be Zach Wilson's problem. I think Trey would be a leader, and I think he's still improving dramatically. And on those factors, I would not want to pull the trigger. But the only thing that I could see them pulling the trigger on is if they just said our cap situation is such where we have to have our third string quarterback making $1 million, not $9 million. But I would say then trade Sam Darnold, because Trey Lance to me has beaten out Sam Darnold for that number 2 job, in my opinion. In my opinion, Brock's been the best. He's had obviously some bad moments where he's thrown interceptions. Some of them have been his fault. Some of them haven't been his fault. Some of them are just the kind of interceptions that he threw last year where, hey, you're being blitzed. It's fourth down. You're trying to make a play. Throw a 50-50 ball down the field and cross your fingers. He's definitely had 2 or 3 picks like that this summer. But I think he's definitely the most advanced of their quarterbacks and should start week 1. But to me, Lance has been the second best quarterback. And I see Brandon Allen as he's got a lot of moxie. He's got a lot of, he's got good footwork in the short game. He looks really accurate or, within 10, 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, but he's not very accurate down the field. But maybe that's an upgrade at $1 million over Sam Darnold at 5. So that's the thing. You got Darnold for 5, you got Lance for 9, and you got Allen for 1. As far as millions of dollars on the contract. So and Brock Purdy's making $840,000. So you do have options that you can carry $14 million of backup quarterbacks on this roster if you want, but they do have a pretty loaded 2024 roster with a lot of great players to pay. You saw the top 100 came out. The Niners have the most players in the top 100 of any team in the NFL. They have 8. So that's part of the reason they wanted to go with a rookie quarterback is because they've got a majorly deep 53-man roster with it's star-studded, and they want to keep that thing together, which is why they wanted the rookie quarterback. Now they have Purdy or Lance on the rookie deal. Flav says also if he doesn't play this year, he'll be impossible to trade next year at $17 million for a quarterback that hasn't really played in 8 years or something. I don't know. Yeah, no, I hear you. So a lot of it's about if Trey plays really well Sunday, that film circulates. People see that. Then he follows it up with the second preseason game. He plays really well in that game. I think at that point, if they're going to move him, it'll be there. It'll be after he shows it for a couple games, and teams will offer more. And then the question is, do the Niners pivot off of Trey? I mean, this has been the debate all off season. I told you guys in February, my read on it was, based on what the Niners were saying and how they were talking and how it was looking, that they were going to recommit to Brock and move off of Trey Lance. I made a bet with Hensley that it would happen before the draft. It didn't happen. At this point, I've seen enough improvement from Trey where I'd be deathly afraid to trade him. I really would be, because I think he's going to get there. So, but my take initially was that they were going to commit to Brock and move off of Trey, and all their actions, if you just forget what they've said, just their actions indicate that that's the plan. Otherwise, why is Sam Darnold here? Why is Brandon Allen here? But we'll see. Maybe Trey's done enough to play well enough this summer to not just impress other teams around the league, but maybe impress the Niner brass of Shanahan and Lynch to the point where they're like, you know what? No, this kid's damn good. And who knows? If Brock Purdy goes down, he's the first guy up, and we want him here. So we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. All right, that's going to do it for us. In about an hour from now, check us out with Vish and Jesse Naylor on the Krueg Show. We'll do a full breakdown of Niner camp, and we'll talk more Niners. The big show with Jesse and Vish coming up in an hour. Thanks to all you guys for participating. If you've yet to hit like and subscribe, please do. We're at 21,253 subs. And also, if you go to the store on YouTube, we got brand new T-shirts there, including one that says "You're effing crazy," or "You're effing lazy," I should say. the effing lazy shirt is now available to be purchased at the Krueg Show channel store on YouTube. Until an hour from now, have a great hour. We'll see you back here in an hour for Jesse and Vish. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you ask.